The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jameson Rabbit, and this week I've got a special guest coming to us from halfway across the country. But as we kind of head towards the final days of this show, I had to find a way to get this guy on. It's my good friend, Mr. Jason Spencer. Welcome back, sir.
It's good to be here.
Look at you in the office in the Ghostbuster garb. It's almost like you knew what we were talking about this week.
That's right.
So excited to have you on. We got a bunch of movies to talk about. We have 3 films, a couple on the theaters, 1 streaming film. And so let's get right into what we have. And I'm going to get us started with what we have on the marquee this week. It's a film from director Michael Mohan starring Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney's hot off the heels of the hit Madam Web. Here she stars as Sister Cecilia, a devout young woman traveling to a convent in Italy where she doesn't really speak the language, but she feels called to join this convent. Upon her arrival, she is received warmly by some, but not so by others, as she is quickly given a warning before taking her vows that she chooses not to heed. And one of the warnings she's told is, death is a part of everyday life here. That's a little foreboding. And there's something ominous in the looks, the warnings, and even in the warm embraces, something ominous in this church. And as this film looks to build this real atmosphere of dread, it's all compounded when Sister Cecilia begins to lose a firm grip on reality after seeing some things in the bowels of the convent that she probably shouldn't have seen. But what we do know to be true is this young woman is chaste, a virgin upon arriving to the convent, yet, as this title suggests, she soon becomes pregnant under immaculate circumstances. Why her? For what reason? We'll find out. The miracle is quickly accepted, though, without much question. And we have a lot of Virgin Mary imagery, and she's worshipped by others in her parish, yet very much kept a secret to the outside world, as her child in the womb is referred to pretty readily as the Savior. And all this is good, but wouldn't make for an interesting movie if there weren't some twists. And that's where the big twist comes in. We get, well, I don't want to spoil things. We kind of get an explanation that, I don't know, in other movies might have been referred to as dino DNA. That describes the Immaculate Conception. But you have that. You have a ramp up into an insane ending. You've got nuns in red masks, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. For me, the movie opened with a scene of a buried alive scenario that was a real mood setter for me. And then shortly thereafter, there was a bird jump scare. Kind of got me going there. But I don't know. You know, this is another in the line of the nunsploitation movies that we've had now for about 5-6 years. I don't know that we keep needing these movies. I feel like this movie has been told before. Your thoughts on this?
I'm not necessarily a big fan of any religious horror film. I feel like this movie, if you are a fan of The Exorcist, The Omen, Rosemary's Baby, this is going to kind of be in your wheelhouse. This is probably going to be something you'll enjoy. It is a really good-looking movie. The art direction, the cinematography, it all works. It all works together to create exactly the movie you saw in that trailer. It's exactly the movie that if you're remotely interested in this type of a film, this is the movie you're getting. You're not going in and getting anything other than what it's promising to be. It's a really short movie. It's only about an hour and a half long. And I feel there were aspects of the movie that were hinted at but never built upon. There could have been more to this story, I feel, to really bring you into the world they're trying to create. We only really get like the barest bones of this world before it's like suddenly like, oh no, this is what the movie's about. Oh, and this is the reveal, and this is the end. Like, it went really, really quick. I'm gonna say like this type of horror movie is not my thing, and so my rating for it is gonna be kind of low. But if you're a fan of any of those three movies that I talked about at the beginning of my review, then I can recommend it, and you'll probably think it's more of a movie than I think it was.
It's interesting because like 3 years ago, 2021, Paul Verhoeven made a movie called Benedetta that's kind of the same movie. And he's, I think, a better filmmaker. And took a little more time with it. I think that's another thing that I felt as well. Like, I didn't really get to know a whole lot about anyone else in this convent. We just kind of started to get her backstory. You know, and it's easy in these movies to build the atmosphere. Lots of candles casting shadows and long corridors and shapeless figures. And, of course, you have throw in a flashlight that kind of works, kind of doesn't, and a lighter that doesn't light right away. I mean, these are all really familiar things that we see here. And, you know, it's kind of hinted early with, I think it was Sister Isabel who gives her like the ominous looks, right? She doesn't belong. And so you know something's not right here. And I felt like just as we were starting to kind of understand some of the people and why they reacted the way they were, we get right into this final ending. And the final 30 minutes of this, it shifts gears into what I thought was maybe a more enjoyable movie. I don't know. But this brisk runtime, I don't think, did it any favors in being able to allow you to get invested into the atmosphere of this movie. And like I say, the ending of this movie was like a different movie almost to me. I don't know.
A little bit. And I went into this film, I knew nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. I had not watched the trailers. I did not look up the synopsis. The only thing I knew about it was going into the theater, they had the poster like right on the wall.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's about a nun, and she's got like blood on her collar, and I'm like, it's a horror movie. I know that much. Let's see what happens. While you were introing the movie and the trailer was playing, I was like, wow, that's the whole movie.
It really is.
there is not much that is left to mystery when you show that trailer, because it's the greatest hit of that film. And again, I think they could have stretched it out a little bit longer. It's not a movie I really want to watch again, or if it was a 2-hour-long movie, I don't think it would have made me feel like I enjoyed the movie anymore. But I feel like they started setting up a world for this horror to happen in, and they didn't build upon it anymore. They had the setup, and then it fell flat, and then it just like branched off and was done.
Run to the finish line.
Yeah, it had promise, even for someone who's not really into this genre of horror. I think it could have been better if they would have tacked on an extra 15-20 minutes to really expand upon the world.
That's all it needed. All right, what did you end up giving Immaculate, sir?
Again, it's not my genre. I like horror movies, but it's not my genre of horror. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm giving it a 1.5 stars out of 5.
Sure.
But I feel like if you are a fan of the religious horror type movies, you'll probably find it in like a 2.5, 3-star, depending on how you're feeling.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I landed. I gave it a 2.5. It's nothing good. It's not bad. I just thought it was kind of meh, and I felt like I've seen this movie before. I thought Sydney Sweeney was actually fine in this, and nothing.
I don't think there were any bad performances. The performances matched the movie, so like it's just it could have been stronger. That's it.
I agree. Let's move on to what else we have on the marquee. I see you wearing your Ghostbusters gear.
As I do.
For those that don't know, Jason was a member of the Nevada Ghostbusters, a guy who does real deal Ghostbusters.
Used to be. Now they're out 6 Ghostbusters.
Nice. So why don't you lead us into what we have?
Well, we have another Ghostbusters movie. This time we've got Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which picked up right after the last Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, where we have the Spengler family returning to New York City to face off against more ghostly baddies. They've moved into the firehouse. They are taking over the family business as they do, and they're coming up against a brand new foe, Garaka, who is an ancient villain who is come to rebuild his like ghostly army and freeze over the world. Because what else are you going to do when you're the undead? The movie is directed by Gil Keenan, written by Gil Keenan. Jason Reitman, who directed the last one, son of the original director, is also one of the writers and producers. We've got Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, and of course McKenna Grace returning from the last film, plus the entire cast of the old school Ghostbusters jumping in, except for a couple notable non-returnees, but we weren't too surprised by that.
Yeah.
And this movie finds our heroes kind of welcoming the new blood, but also like having to deal with the fact that, you know, their time has kind of passed a little bit. Dan Aykroyd actually plays a larger part of this movie than I thought, than most people thought he would, as the Ghostbuster who's like reminiscing about the days of old and really still wanting to be a part of the action.
Yeah.
While the others are perfectly fine with letting the new blood kind of take over.
This all feels true to life.
Absolutely. Overall, it's a fun movie. I have some problems with the script in terms of I thought some story elements could have been better. They could have been handled a little bit better, or even so much so that the movie tends to start off a bunch of story elements that don't really get the attention they deserve because we're focusing on so many different characters.
I agree. Yeah.
And while it's enjoyable to have the old school cast returning, playing around with the young blood, the movie really needed to find its focus. It's either going to tell one story with like a side story, or one main story, but it really tries to do like 5 different types of stories, and it gets messy from there because nothing really gets the time it deserves. Really get, at least for me, the first time I watched it, the audience really invested in any of the stories being told. There's moments that I enjoyed, very well written moments, very well acted moments, but in the end, as a whole, I was like a little let down with some of the aspects they were trying to tell because they just didn't have the time.
Yeah.
Because by the time we're trying to like focus on this story, like, oh crap, we forgot about this story we're trying to tell, and this new character we're trying to introduce, and we're trying to kind of give you an update on the old character, and it just feels like they're trying to do way too much in this movie when it would have been a stronger movie if they would have focused a little bit more and given us a reason to care about these stories rather than just like quantity over quality, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed Afterlife, the previous film to this, because
I loved it.
It brought the Ghostbusters to a new generation. I mean, literally, my kids all of a sudden are like, oh, Ghostbusters are cool. I know you felt that too. This one tried to straddle the line, I thought, a little more, and had really mixed results of paying homage to the old ones. And I thought that maybe too much. Maybe we need to just focus it on this new generation. I did love the nostalgia that I enjoyed more was like the use of the old commercials and the Ray Parker Jr. video as they're like reminiscing of the good old days of the Ghostbusters. Like, oh, that's fun. But I don't think going forward we need to bring the old cast back anymore. I think, it's nice that they brought this back to New York City. We're in the firehouse. I liked all that. And it felt like Dan Aykroyd's character. I mean, I thought it was kind of funny of him playing like the TV host of this spiritual show. Like, yeah, this is all echoing his life and career post Ghostbusters. Yeah. The comedy is there, the music is there, and some of the things I didn't like though is Kumail Nanjiani has a role that becomes very important in this movie as Nadim Razmiedi, who kind of introduces this evil orb that holds all the evil that we're going to be fighting. And his story just didn't work for me. Oddly, bringing magic into the reality of the Ghostbusters felt a little off to me, felt almost a little Kingdom of the Crystal Skull to me, introducing that element. I don't know. I always love when you bring out an old book. Patton Oswalt is a librarian. Anytime you bring out an old book that's describing ancient artifacts, I'm a fan of that. But I really love this new cast. I really enjoy all of them together, and I kind of want more of them. And Phoebe being separated from the cast for a large chunk of the movie, she had a story that kept being kind of clipped, I thought, and kind of would. I love this franchise, but if I'm being honest with myself, I think there's really like 2.5 good movies in this franchise that I really enjoy. And this one, I don't know, I feel like they tend to repeat plot points from time to time in these movies. And so, I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I was kind of dumbfounded by how it received such poor reviews immediately. I don't know if you saw any of those.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, that really shocked me. One person I talked to said, yeah, I heard there was a teen romance angle in this movie, so I'm not going to go see it. Interesting. I don't know. But I think it's fun. It's not groundbreaking. Any other thoughts on Ghostbusters?
Well, I'll echo some of your thoughts. Kumail Nanjiani, I like him.
Yeah.
And I actually liked his character in this movie. I like what he did. Do I think this character needs to be in this movie? Absolutely not. The character, I'm sorry, man. I like you, and I think you did a good job. But literally, you could be plucked from this movie and nothing changes, really. So that's unfortunate, because I do like him. I wish he had just a better role as opposed to the one he got in terms of just kind of the weirdness of his character in terms of the world that we built with the Ghostbusters. I also I like seeing the old cast, but I think the old cast needed to be used in a better way. I like Winston being kind of the head guy who's financing the team and being kind of the leader, if you will.
He's got a Ghostbusters Geek Squad.
Yeah, I like Dan Aykroyd as the guy they go to when they want to talk about mystical things that they don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Bill Murray does not need to be in this movie. I feel like he's shoehorned into this movie just because
I think he would agree with
literally
you.
has nothing to do in this movie that required him to be there.
Yeah.
I like Annie Potts too, and I think almost the same thing. She didn't really need to be there. As much as I like seeing Janine stewed up, it wasn't propelling the story forward. When we talk about Phoebe, who I think is the heart of these two movies, the storyline that they had her in, I respected part of it, her kind of struggling with the fact that she's young and just having trouble pursuing her calling as a Ghostbuster, which she absolutely is passionate for. And then in a storyline of a friendship she makes that, again, we don't have the time to solidify that friendship or that story at all so that we care about it. And so I'm sitting there being we could have cut that whole storyline out and given it to Finn Wolfhard's Trevor character, who we barely see in the movie. All he does is kind of hunt down Slimer, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit more in terms of the new cast and a real focus on that. I like the big bad guy. The big bad guy in this movie is cool looking and kind of scary, but again, we don't give him enough time to become the character he could be because we're focused on way too many other things.
Yeah.
I agree with you. This was a fun movie. Was it the greatest Ghostbusters movie? No, I expected more. I did watch it twice, and the second time I enjoyed it more because I was able to just not care about the nitpicky nature of my brain when it comes to movies.
Yeah.
But it definitely, if you're going to ask me which one's better in terms of these new movies, Afterlife is a far superior film.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, that leads right into, what did you end up giving this movie then?
I gave this movie 3 stars. That may be a little high after I just explained to you how many things I'm just I don't know about this, that, and the other thing. But after watching it the second time, I did have a funner time watching it because I was able to just not care about that stuff I was nitpicking.
Yeah.
It is a fun movie, and there are it opens up with an action sequence where the Ecto-1's flying down the streets of New York City, and they're shooting at the sewer dragon. Yeah. And it's fun. It's got some humor. It's got some great action. That's worth it on the big screen. I loved watching that on the big screen. So I would recommend seeing if you're a fan of the franchise, go see it in the theater because it does have some spectacle to it.
Yeah, I agree. I ended up giving it 3 stars as well. It's enjoyable. It's not one of the best, but you're not going to be upset having seen this movie. It's a fun one.
And I look forward to more installments with the new cast.
Right, move forward with them, exactly. All right, speaking of moving forward, let's take a look ahead. Let's take a look at what was on the streaming spotlight this week, where we have another film reinvigorating an old franchise, I guess, an old
Did it
movie.
reinvigorate it?
Well, let's talk about that. We got Roadhouse over on Prime Video from director Doug Liman. Stars Jake Gyllenhaal. This is 25 years after the original. We get this remake. Jake Gyllenhaal is playing Dalton, the Patrick Swayze character from the original. He's a cooler, a guy brought in to help turn around a rough bar. He puts the patrons in line with his fists and helps the staff learn better techniques to help rowdy patrons before he moseys on down the road. He's also a notorious former MMA fighter turned underground pit fighter that no one wants to mess with, and we find out why as this film goes along. He's brought in by a bar owner named Frankie to help her save the Roadhouse in Florida Keys town, but of course what he finds is local bikers and tough guys have the run of the place, and he's got to use his own style of coercion to escort them out. And of course, they're going to return along with so many other bad guys in this town who really want to destroy this roadhouse. Why? That really doesn't matter. But we have the boss, played with Frat Boy Smarm by Billy Magnuson. He plays Ben Bratt. He's the local rich guy. And you also have the crooked sheriff, played by Joaquim de Almeida. And when their efforts to oust Dalton don't work, they bring in the loose cannon Knox, played by former UFC champion Conor McGregor, who is uncontrollable and just might burn everything down in his efforts. And you also add in a really lukewarm romance angle between Dalton and the local Dr. Ellie, who he sends plenty of patients to. And you also have a young bartender who tries to emulate Dalton's techniques, and you've got a really room temperature remake of a classic movie. You tune in for the fights. There's plenty of those here. There's also some really bad CGI amidst the explosions. We try to get a story between the waves of baddies that come, but that really doesn't matter. And like I said, when Conor McGregor, when Knox shows up, everything kind of devolves into chaos. And I mean, Conor McGregor's not an actor. He's a presence, and that's in this movie. Like I said, the romance angle between Dalton and Ellie is a dead fish. The young bartender angle, which I enjoy in the original, the young bartender kind of being taken under the Dalton's wing, that isn't given much time. What we do have is lots of live music from bands in the Roadhouse that basically each set up the next fight. We see a band playing music, you know somebody's going to get punched in the face within the next 2 minutes. And here's one of my big issues with this movie, among many, is in the original, you know, Sam Elliott comes in to help his compadre. And in this one, Dalton has no friends, so he's forced to go it solo. And I think that saps a lot of the charm out of the character of Dalton. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal, as much as I love him, played this kind of stiff and charisma-less. And then the romance angle is weak, and then he doesn't have any friends. I mean, at least in the original, you know, he had one guy who connected with in his past who's willing to put it on the line, put his life on the line to help him. This one, he doesn't have that. And so he's just wandering the land, breaking up fights like a bad episode of Kung Fu. And it's a film that I thought really suffered in the second half for all of this. I don't know. The original, I don't know what you think of the original. I thought it was a guilty pleasure that turned into the cult classic. I don't think this one's going to make that jump.
No, not at all. And I kept thinking during the screening of this film, Patrick Swayze's Dalton just had a charisma to him that Jake Gyllenhaal, unfortunately, did not have. He was almost there. There were moments where I was like, man, I like him as this character. And then the charm that character had just dropped off for like 2 scenes. And then he would be charming for a second, and then it just drop off again. Like, he never really reached the coolness of what Dalton was.
No.
One of the things, you know, in your kind of synopsis of the movie, you're like, Jake Gyllenhaal plays Dalton, a cooler. No, he's not. He's just an MMA fighter.
Yeah.
Like, Dalton from the original Roadhouse was the cooler. He had skills. He had a specific set of skills that he would bring into these situations, and he would go from, like, Roadhouse to Roadhouse, like, doing his job. This guy's just like, I got nothing else going on, so I might as well do this job. And Dalton in the original comes in, you know you're dealing with a professional. This guy's coming in, you're just like, what's your qualification? You're just pit fighting all the time. And almost like just at the end of your rope. Like, there's that coolness factor of the job that he's brought in to do that he just doesn't have compared to the old movie. And I can't really put my finger on it why it doesn't work, because Roadhouse the original is such a simple idea, and for them not to be able to like bring that over to this in a successful way doesn't jive. Like it should have been an easy.
It's weird too because Doug Liman is a very good director. He's made really good movies.
Yeah.
And this one just felt like he missed. There's no throat rip in this movie, which I'm waiting for the whole time. Like, come on, give me a throat rip. What's going on here? And there's a lot of consternation over this movie being put on Prime Video. Doug Liman protested his own movie because it
didn't go to the premiere.
Because it didn't go to theaters. This movie landed exactly where it should have landed. This movie would have tanked in the theaters. Because it's not there. It doesn't. The original had some charm to it, and I'm sure Jake Gyllenhaal was pumped to be able to reprise a role of his former Donnie Darko castmate, as maybe an homage to Patrick Swayze. But this movie just didn't have the charm that it needed to be more than just something, just fist flying and goofy action.
Yeah, and I think Gyllenhaal brought what he could to the role. I think the script was just really lacking.
Yeah.
In terms of the depth of what I was kind of hoping for. And I know that's a lot to ask when we're talking about a Roadhouse remake.
Yeah.
But it could have been better.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that I would point out that just pulled me out of this movie and I was done with it was Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
He is a gremlin of a man who just is so much. He is so much in this movie that I'm just like, did nobody stop him and be like, bro, you just need to need to bring it down.
There's got to be levels to this, man.
Yeah, he's grinning like a fool the entire movie. He's super loud. He's all walking weird the whole time. Like and even like when it comes to like the fights with him in it are like lackluster compared to like the fights we see with everybody else. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal was. He was one of the two names that they brought into this.
It's stunt
movie.
casting. It's all it felt like was stunt casting. Like, here's an MMA fighter everybody knows.
I think that in the end, I would rather just watch the original Roadhouse.
Absolutely. Amen. All right, what did you end up giving this Roadhouse remake, sir?
Listen, I gave it 2, and I gave it 2 for this reason. It's a pretty movie in terms of like the location's cool, the Roadhouse design is cool. Jake Gyllenhaal, again, I think he did a fine job with what was given to him. I think he could have elevated it more if the script was there. Mm-hmm. He had charm when the script gave it to him, but other than that, like, it was a little rough. So I'm giving it 2. I think people who just want to watch people beat on each other will enjoy this movie. But for me, if I ever watch Roadhouse again, it's going to be starring Patrick Swayze.
There you go. I echo your thoughts on this. I gave it 2 stars as well. There's much better films to watch out there. All right, let's take a look ahead at what is coming soon. I'm looking at the weekend of April 5th. We have a few films. First off is Monkey Man, Dev Patel's new film that he wrote, directed, stars in. It's a John Wick type movie. He's going seeking revenge on those who killed his family. We also have The First Omen. A young woman in Rome discovers that there's darkness and that makes her question her faith, and there might be a conspiracy to bring across the birth of the Antichrist. This sounds familiar.
Wait, didn't we just review this movie?
So, we also have Dogman, Luc Besson's newest film about a young man who finds salvation in his love of dogs. And over on our streaming platforms on Netflix, we have Scoop, a film starring Gillian Anderson about how the BBC obtained the bombshell interview with Prince Andrew about Jeffrey Epstein. Those are all the films of April 5th. Before we go any further, sir, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for doing the show. People don't know, you're the guy who actually got me into podcasting eons ago, got me talking about movies in front of a microphone 100 years ago, which led to me being offered this program right here. And I have always enjoyed our discussions. I respect your opinions and your thoughts, and I just love talking movies and whatever, whether there's a microphone or not. And I really appreciate you doing this and really appreciate you talking movies with me.
Well, I appreciate you, sir, and I wish I could have been on more episodes, but I'm glad to be on the ones that I've been invited to. It's always a fun time, and you guys, not just you, but your whole team has always been super helpful. So congratulations on the super long run, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Appreciate it. All right, let's, before we go, I want to thank my sponsor as well, Marcus Theaters Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for sponsoring this program for 517 episodes.
Oh,
We
man.
appreciate that. It's pretty great. Love a Dream Lounger. I was just sitting in one this morning.
That's right.
Next,
Go support your local theaters, everybody.
that's right. Amen. Next week, I'm going to be talking about movies like Godzilla, Kong, The New Empire, Love Lies Bleeding, Late Night with the Devil. I'm going to be joined by Zenon Schmitz for that. But again, sir, thank you for joining me. Until next week, though, I'm Jameson.
I'm Jason.
Have a great one.